So Andrew and I have a new segment for you guys, and it's called Around the Horn. And what that basically is, it's a wheel made of all of the positions in Major League Baseball. And Andrew is going to spin that wheel, and whatever position it lands on, Andrew and I will give our individual top fives at that position. So Andrew, without further ado, let's see what position we get for this episode.
Now, and interesting, shortstops.
Ooh, shortstops. That's a good one. A lot of good names on there. Should be a fun list to make.
All right, so now we're going to head on to our final segment, our newest segment, Around the Horn. We're going to give top five for positions. Today is going to be shortstops. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to give my top five. Will's going to give his little 2 cents, and then he'll give his top five, and then we'll debate which one is better. Obviously, we think ours is better, but you guys will have to comment, decide who had the better list. So my number one shortstop in all of baseball, it's a pretty obvious pick, Fernando Tatis Jr. A lot of people know him, one of the more popular players in baseball, only 22 years old. The numbers he's put up since debuting, especially the past 2 years since he really broke out in 2020, have been stuff we haven't seen from shortstop since like A-Rod, like 975 OPS last year, 2020 season. More 42 homers, 25 stolen bases, more than just 2020. 6 WAR. He was an all-star. He got moved to the outfield later in the year because he had the shoulder separation, which they obviously moved him to keep him more healthy because his bat is a lot more valuable than his glove. So the injuries are probably the biggest concern with Tatis moving forward. But when he's on the field, the man is just an MVP candidate at all times since the start of 2020. So he's obviously my number one. Moving on to my number two. And one last thing to mention with Tatis is the only thing that might hold him back from not being on number one, some people's list, is the defense. The defense is obviously a big concern with Tatis. Number two is Trey Turner of the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's only 28 years old. He's going to be a free agent after 2022, sorry. He's now going to be the shortstop for the Dodgers after being the second baseman, after being traded midseason. Now Seeger's left to go to the Rangers. He had a 911 OPS in 2020, 328 average, 28 homers, over 6 WAR. He had a 158 weighted runs per plus in 2020, a 142 in 2021 with the Nats, and then being traded at the trade deadline to the Dodgers. He had 32 stolen bases, 2020 season. He won the World Series in 2019, obviously, with the Nationals, won the batting title. Very versatile player, very fast, one of the fastest players in baseball. I think it's a pretty easy pick for Trey Turner at number two. Now moving on to number three, one of the biggest discussion topics of this offseason, where he's going to go. Carlos Correa, of formerly the Houston Astros, currently a free agent. He had over a 7 WAR season last year, 26 homers, finished 5th in MVP, with 850 OPS. He won the Platinum Glove, so he's probably one of the best fielders on this list. As I said before, probably going to get a deal, $350 million, very young still, so going to get a big payday this offseason. He's always been a big, very balanced hitter. You know, he can hit for high average, over 300, hit a lot of homers, doubles, very consistent too. He did have a little bit of a rough 2020 season, but he picked it up with his year last year. So number three, Carlos Correa. Moving on to number four is Corey Seeger of now the Texas Rangers. The last 2 years have really been Corey Seager's peak, I would say. He's had 926 OPS since the start of 2020. He's an elite hitter in the regular season last year, although he was hurt, only played 90 games. In the playoffs was really where he took off, made a name for himself. Not necessarily made a name for himself, but really showed the world who he is. You know, him and Randy Rosarena just hitting homer after homer in that postseason. It was crazy. And then now he has a 10-year, $325 million contract from the Rangers, which he's very comfortable with that stadium because he played the entire 2020 playoffs at that field. One of the bigger concerns with Seeger is the defense. He's probably around a league average defender. Not what you want out of your shortstop. You always want your shortstop to be very solid because it's a very important defensive position. You might have to get moved down to third base down the line. He's had some injury troubles, some his fault, some not. And yeah, that's pretty much it on Corey Seeger. And then moving on to the final spot on my top 5 of the Boston Red Sox, Xander Bogart. He's a very, very consistent offensive shortstop, which is what carries his game because his defense, as a lot of people know, is very bad. And he's never had a season where he didn't have a negative defense run saved. If anyone knows what that is, basically just a stat explaining how many runs you saved on defense at your position. But ever since Mookie left, he's been the heart of that Red Sox lineup, just carrying it. Top 20 MVP finish in the last 4 years, 133 OPS plus since start of 2019. Some might not overlook his offense due to his defense, and they say it's very important, but I just can't overlook all that offense and to put him out of my top 5.
Yeah, Andrew, I really like your list here. It's definitely a tough list for myself. There's a lot of good shortstops out there. It's a plethora in the game. It's always a nice thing to see. Now, my top 5, we agree on the top 3, but our 4 and 5s are a little different. So I have Tatis at 1. I was debating switching him and Trey Turner, but at the end of the day, I got to give it to Tatis. He's only 22 years old. Him and Trey Turner have very similar numbers. Turner hits for a little higher of an average, but I'm going to give the nod to Tatis. We'll see how it goes this year. And then at 2, I have Turner. And as well as 3, I have Carlos Correa. Now, this is where we differ. I gave my 4 spot to Trevor Story. Now, I know, down year from last year, was not the shortstop that we are used to seeing, but nevertheless, still a good season. 4.2 WAR, 24 home runs, 75 RBIs, 251 average, 329 on base percentage, 471 slugging, and an 801 OPS. So those are good numbers for anyone. But in terms of Trevor Story, they're not the numbers that we're used to seeing from him. But nevertheless, still a good year. He's also a 2-time Silver Slugger. And like a few of the guys that we have mentioned, he was also a 2020 guy, 20 plus home runs, 20 plus stolen bases. He's probably one of the more athletic shortstops out there. And similar to Correa, also still a shortstop. Probably not going to get as much money as Correa due to the down year. And he does get hit with some injuries a little bit. So I would expect a little shorter contract with a little less money, but nevertheless, still a great shortstop. He's my number 4. Now at 5, I have another young guy, and I I was impressed with the year that he put up last year. He's going to be a centerpiece for his team for the coming years. Very exciting to watch. He also hurts my team a lot, and that is Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette, the shortstop for the Toronto Blue Jays, a 5.9 WAR, 29 home runs, and 102 RBIs to go along with a 298 batting average, a 343 on base percentage, and a 484 slugging percentage with a very nice 828 OPS. Now, he was elected to his first All-Star game in 2021, and it was a breakout season for him. He was very good when he came up in 2019, and he also had a very productive 2020 season. This was his first real full season in the major leagues, and he didn't disappoint whatsoever. Another 2020 guy with his 29 home runs and his 25 stolen bases. So creeping up on a potential 30-30 guy. That would be nice to see. And now after 2022, Andrew, I think you may be able to agree with me here. I could see Bichette possibly squeezing into the top 3 in this discussion. But for right now, I'm going to keep him in the top 5 for myself. And as I said before, he is adding to a very bright future in Toronto. So some exciting things here. Now, before we move on to the outro, Andrew, we have a little bit of some differences here. You have Seeger, I have Story, you have Bogarts, and I have Bichette. Both Seeger and Bogarts, I wanted to put them on here. This is what I was saying before. Very tough list to make, but I could not keep out Trevor Story. I really like what he brings to the table. I could see him being better than Seeger, as you have him, but I have to give it to him over Seeger for right now, at least. And Bichette, too. I got to give it to him over Bogarts because Bichette is a better defender than Bogarts. And I know, as you said, Bogarts carries that Red Sox lineup. He does. He really does. And that's his strong suit. But Bichette not only does extraordinary damage in the lineup, he's a very, very athletic and exciting defender to watch. So I give it to Bichette and Trevor Story.
I could see why you don't have Corey Seeger in your top 5, obviously injuries, but I just don't see how anyone. I can understand your reasoning. Just myself, I couldn't keep Corey Seager off. He's just such an elite hitter. Like the defense,
he is. Yeah,
it's not
all fields. He's great.
It's not the best, but with what Corey Seager's done in the playoffs in 2020 and the regular season the past 2 years, over 900 OPS, that's really good for a shortstop. There's not many shortstops. It's like maybe a handful. No, not a handful. Like a few each year, 2 or 3 that have over 900 OPS as a shortstop. And as you said about Story, last year was really what really turned me off him. Like he's definitely my number 6, but I did have Trevor Story at number 1, my number 1 shortstop for the 2020 season, and now he's out of it just because the arm is a little bit concerned, the throwing arm it's short, the numbers just took a huge dip. And for someone to have that low offensive numbers when they play at a very hitters-friendly park, as Coors Field, everyone knows, I don't know so much about Story. I do think he'll be good. He's still very good. I can't put him over Xander and Seeger.
Yep, and I get your reasoning as well. I'm giving Story the benefit of the doubt. We'll see where he ends up. Maybe he'll be more productive somewhere else, getting out of Colorado. Maybe he goes somewhere where he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting on offense. So we'll see.